No, it lost it. Oh, there it is. Hey, there we go. And let's get that little special request. Somewhere We All Belong. Linkin Park. Rest in peace. I forget the lead singer's name, but I know he passed away.
Chester.
There you go. Chester sounds
I believe
right.
it's Chester. Yeah.
Great song request. We've had some good songs from our guests here. But today, Bono's Health, joined by Dr. Nick. And if anyone needs to look him up, go check out the most famous strip club in all of Colorado, and you'll see him not necessarily frequenting it, but he happens to live there. He didn't even know it. We just talked about that. I'm sorry to blow up your spot, Dr. Nick, but maybe that's where you belong.
Never.
Anyway.
Never. Not. I'm not a strip club guy. What he means,
right.
what he's implying is that I live. That is a landmark around where I live, and that is as detailed as we will get into it, because I'm not trying to dox myself on the internet.
That's fine. Yeah. So hopefully that causes you no issues. I don't think I'm on the Joe Rogan level where someone's going to Reddit this and do all that. But maybe some point someone will find you. You are a prolific podcast guest, and so hopefully we do some justice and talk about some things that people haven't heard you talk about. And again, great following. If you guys haven't seen Dr. Nick, check him out. Go follow him. The Fittest Doc. I do have to ask, has anyone challenged your title? And to a throwdown, did you come from? You kind of finished high in you got the Fit Aid bottle. Is that where we going? Were you going for the crown there?
No. I was gonna drink some, but no. It's actually not a title. I've spoken about this on a number of podcasts. And I think that's why nobody's come for it, because it's not a title. It's instead aspirational. So think about it, like, obviously your name is Bo, right? So if somebody said to you, or let's say you named yourself the Fittest Bo, that is aspirational. You are aspiring to always turn into a fitter and better version of yourself day after day, right? So instead of calling myself the Fittest Nick, which isn't as catchy, right? I'm like, okay, hey, I will forever and ever try to turn myself into a fitter doctor, a healthier doctor, a more wellness-oriented doctor. And that's so to answer your question, nobody's challenged it. But hey, if there's any doctor out there, any medical doctor, that's the nuance, that wants to come to my gym and work out with me. I mean, I invite people all the time.
We're not allowed as physios and chiros. The other doctors aren't allowed in just because.
No. You're making it sound like a challenge. So if the other doctor, listen, there needs to be an MD thing, right?
Okay.
Sure. Bo, we're listen, you and I are already going to work out, but I feel like if somebody's going to talk crap to me and try to back it up, hey, we got to throw down.
And if you guys go on his Insta, he's got some big numbers. He just posted a 435 back squat, 555 deadlift, moving fast. I will challenge you on the snatch, because I'm a much smaller human than you, and you're not to call you out, but I think I see some technique things we can work on, but it's okay. You got to be well balanced. The numbers are still good. The numbers.
No. Let's make that our first topic of conversation, because I don't know how you feel, Bo, but that's one of the things that I love most about CrossFit is the obsession. Well, I think initially people are obsessed about their numbers and moving the weight, by any means necessary. But I think that as you get into it, at least me, like I'm 14 years into it, right? I started in 2010. I am now obsessed with movement to the extent that I will absolutely I'll watch my videos over and over and break it down. So I would love to know what you saw so that I can fix it.
I took a quick look. I saw a little bit of, it just wasn't as smooth. The easiest eye test it wasn't as smooth as I'd like it. There wasn't a snappy turnover. I think you have the strength. Obviously, if you're deadlifting 555, I'm sure you can do a snatch deadlift at whatever 350. But then, that's always the conversation I've had as a coach as well. Is like, what's stopping you? If you can pull it to your nipple line, like, why can't you drop under it? So is it mobility missing? Is there something in that, like, motor pattern? Especially, I started the same year, 2010. That's when I found all my fun stuff. And I always was really proud of my technique and my snatch. My strength was always lagging. So if I could take my technique and your strength, we'd be unstoppable. But
so you're talking about the third pull. So I think you're right too. When I look at myself, I think the third pull, I think I focus more on getting the bar up rather than pulling under, right?
Right.
And I have,
because you have the strength for it. You have the strength for it.
Yep. You're
And
right.
so that's
Absolutely.
that easy kind of like almost trap to fall in when you're as strong as you are, right? Same thing when I started rock climbing. When I moved out here to Colorado, everyone, come out, and I was like, yeah, okay, I have the strength.
Sure.
I was a CrossFit regional athlete, whatever, and I'm like, I'm pulling with my arms, and I'm trying to, and I knew technique was important, but I just didn't know the technique. Everyone's like, stay closer to the wall, use your toes, this and that. I'm like, it's so not natural, and you just got to practice it, and then the more reps you get. And like you said, also if anyone wants to check out and wants to geek out on all this fun stuff of the movement piece, a great WOD prep video you did recently, working on your handstand walks. That's, some really good technique pieces in there. So yeah, I love that, there's that depth of kind of philosophy behind all this. But I do want to take all that, and you have the fittest in the name, and again, it's aspirational. We've established it's not the title, the fittest on earth. We're not saying that, but there is that. But yeah. Do you kind of when you talk about fitness and you have it in your your title, do you just define fitness the same CrossFit methodology, or do you have a different definition of fitness?
Let's put it this way, Bo. I have heard the CrossFit methodology definition, and I am somebody who is very specific with my vernacular and my words and my speech. And in as much as I did not make up, obviously, the way that CrossFit HQ put that together, I cannot, to me, it's unassailable. To me, just listening to their definition, I'm like, I don't see any holes in this that I could poke through. So I agree with the CrossFit definition of fitness. The nuance there, I don't know if this is what you're asking, but I am going to go on a limb to say it, because I say it to my patients and my clients all the time. I do not think CrossFit is the way. I do not think it is the only way to work out. Yep, I love that. Yep, it's that exactly. Broad time, fitness over broad time and modal domains, if I remember.
Work capacity over broad time and modal domains. There's that like physics formula that work is
force times distance divided by time
over time. Yeah, exactly. Keith Wittenstein, who's a famous seminar staff, old school guy. He has that tattooed on his forearm.
Holy.
Yeah, he's committed. He's committed.
Nice.
So yeah, for anyone who missed that definition, sorry to just take that step back as the host here. We were talking about why Dr. Nick, considering how many podcasts he's been on, why is he not doing it? Because he just wants to do what he's doing, and so he doesn't want to have that extra layer thing. And so I'm going to pull it back and say for the listener, that definition of fitness that CrossFit uses work capacity over broad time and modal domains, meaning just to break that down real quick, like if again, Dr. Nick here can deadlift 555, the best I've ever deadlifted, maybe 450. But if we had to deadlift 225, which is much lighter, for 50 reps, and then I'm probably you look big in your stuff. I don't know how big you are. But if we're challenging something for a small guy, you balance that out. That is kind of, to me, the beauty of CrossFit. You have these balances of tests. Tall guys going to do better on rowing, wall balls, but it's a bigger struggle for deadlifts and snatches and things like that, where we can go into femur length and depth of that. But yeah, work capacity, how much work can you get done is really what we're judged on. How many burpees can you do in 7 minutes? That's it. The standards are all the same. You might be coming from a different background, physically, spiritually, whatever it is. But at the end of the day, that's the score. What is your score on this test? And then if we can do that over broad time, meaning there's a 60-second test, there's a 60-day test. I'm doing the half Ironman we were just talking about. He kind of scoffed at me. That's okay. I said, you're one of those guys. I was like, no, not really. And then modal domains, again, all these different things we're talking about. So that just to give a little background on that. So I do always like asking guests on Bono's Health here, what is their definition of fitness? Because not everyone shares that definition by any means. I do agree with you. It's hard. I kind of say the same thing. It's hard to poke a hole in that piece, but sometimes, it's the ACE, the NSCA definitions are kind of like being able to do a lot of stuff and not be limited in life. And like,
sure.
And it's like, you think for these big organizations, they'd have something a little better. I like, and I think we're, if you guys can't tell listening already, we're geeks on this thing. And we like that is this kind of complexity to it. There's nuance to it. So I think that's a piece of it, but I did want to make sure we touched on that. Did you have another piece on that?
Yeah. So, okay. So two things, actually. I'll wrap up initially what I was saying. for anybody listening to this, and I'm sure Bo agrees. In my opinion, the best, because everybody will ask, right? Hey, what's the best food? What's the best exercise? The best exercise is what you can be consistent with over time, extrapolated over time. If that is walking consistently around your neighborhood for 3 miles every day, if that's snowboarding, if that's skiing, it doesn't matter. Just do you enjoy it enough that you can be consistent with it over time? As Bo and I just remarked, we've both been doing this since 2010, right? Anything that somebody does for anything more than 10 years, you know that there's some degree of enjoyment to it. I can't lie to you and tell you that I enjoy CrossFit every day. Pretty much the time when I hate CrossFit the most is in the middle of a 10-minute or in the middle of a 20-minute workout, right? Or basically in the middle of a longer workout. I hate everything about CrossFit, but obviously it's brought us coming back. And then the second thing I would say, as it pertains to what you just said, I think the only hole I can poke in that definition isn't necessarily a hole that discounts CrossFit for the individual and discounts the benefit of CrossFit for the individual. But I do think that a pretty easy to poke hole in it is when you consider that definition, and then now, okay, say, hey, Bo, you and I are at the CrossFit Games, and we're going to do the same workout, and we're going to compare our scores. Like we did not do. If you consider the physics definition of work, which you so eloquently articulated earlier, we did not do the same amount of work, right? When I do one wall ball to a 10-foot
sounds like a tall guy being a little sour. That's what it sounds like to me. I've heard this. I've heard this argument before.
Listen, I'm not sour about it, because I'll tell people, I'll say, hey, listen, because I love this. People love to miss nuance. Even when you try to speak with nuance, a lot of people will miss it. So I'll tell people all the time, no, CrossFit is the best thing I could be doing. It is the reason I look like I look right now. It is the reason that at 40 years old, I'm physically capable of doing what I can do. It is the reason why I have no medical or chronic medical issues, unlike a majority of this country at an even younger age. So when you look at CrossFit only for the individual and the individual the individual benefits, and you don't compare them to somebody else in like a leaderboard, yes, in my opinion, nothing beats CrossFit. But the moment that you start saying, okay, well, we're going to have this competition, then really what you're judging is, okay, because exactly what you said earlier is the truth, Bo. There are different, like wall balls, rowing. There are different advantages that taller people have, wall balls, rowing, running. And then there are different advantages that shorter people have, burpee box jump overs, handstand push-ups, the list goes on. And I think that ultimately then, if you back up and look at it, then really the onus falls upon the programmer, right? Mm-hmm. So Castro at the game, at the games, is he truly programming an effective test that essentially equilibrates all the athletes across the spectrum so that the truly fittest rise to the top? Or are you going to have people like Fikowski, who's my height? Are you going to have people like Fikowski sidelined for years and years, always placing in maybe the top 10 or top 20, but always sidelined, while people like Frazier and Froning are consistently winning, right? That magic height in CrossFit of 5'6", 5'7", I'm
5'8". It's perfect.
Crushing it.
I was genetically predisposed. Literally one of my first ever CrossFit classes, 2010, the guy, the coach was like, you should consider competing. Like you have the size for it. And cause I had a football background, I was like, and he kind of saw that whole, like, this guy's built for it. All right, let's move on from the CrossFit. Cause, sure. and again, I would love to hear, I want to move over to the medical side as a medical doctor, as you are. We kind of skipped over that as your introduction. I think you are licensed for whatever that's, part of this conversation in Colorado and Texas. Is that right?
No. So I have a number, because I do telemedicine. So I have a number of licenses in different states. So yeah.
Gotcha. So yeah, I mean, and for anyone, I actually don't promote this part of my stuff enough. My business is Fit Care, Wellness, and Physiotherapy. Fit Care, I think, again, listening to a bunch of your other podcasts, kind of ties in that sick care model. The whole point is if you focus on your fitness, you can avoid health care. That's the underlying. of that. I'm sure you're familiar with Dr. Peter Attia, talking about medicine 2.0 versus medicine 3.0. That medicine 2.0,
Sure.
and again, I've heard you talk about this, and it sounds like your practice.
Yep.
I just wanted to bring it to this head of the fact that medicine 2.0, the sick care model, is all about keeping you alive. If you're in a car accident, I want medicine 2.0 on my side. Stabilize your bleeding, your vitals, your organs, all that stuff. But then medicine 3.0 is much more looking at integrating everything into this long-term disease prevention, health care, actual caring about your health, not your sickness, and again, improving your quality of life, not just your years or your ability to stay alive, which is great. So go ahead and give us a little more insight on how you practice the art of medicine, and how you've what you've seen in the medical space. Again, I've heard you talk about this thing, but I want to bring a little bit, and if you want to sum it up into smaller ball size, that's totally fine, because we got a lot to cover. But I did want to touch on this.
Okay. I'm going to give you just a quick summary at the beginning, but then give me just a little more of a pointed question, because I don't know exactly what you're asking. But yeah, basically, I'm a medical doctor. I graduated Ohio State from the Ohio State University College of Medicine in 2015. I've been practicing medicine since entering med school, which is what most of us do. I'm a primary care physician. As Bo articulated, I very much believe that number one, movement is medicine. Number two, that prevention is better than cure. I think that there's a lot wrong with the current medical world, with the industrial complex that the current healthcare space is, in terms of profiting off of people's sickness instead of still figuring out a way to profit. I mean, businesses can only stay in business when they profit. So I'm not knocking a business for profiting, but I am knocking a business for how you choose to stay in profit, how you choose to make your money. And I think that when you look at the food industry, the big pharma, healthcare, and the collusion that, at least in my opinion, tends to happen between all three of them, and the fact that the moment that you cure a patient of somebody, or the moment you cure a patient of something that they've had that's chronic, you have effectively lost a customer. So we have essentially disincentivized people becoming healthy. And I think that because of that, it is absolutely incumbent upon each and every one of us. The onus is on us to stay healthy. That's not me telling you to not trust your doctor. I think that, how do I say this? I don't think that you should meet your doctor and trust them from the beginning. I don't think trust is something that anybody should just be given. I think that it is something that should be earned, regardless of if you're a doctor or whatever you are. But I do faithfully and strongly believe that, alignment between patient and doctor needs to be present. And what I mean by that is that there needs to be some degree of you, some element of you that you feel aligned, you feel that you and your doctor share the same values and the same core beliefs, such that you get to a place of trusting them, such that you get to a place of understanding that they truly and dutifully have your best interests at heart. So unfortunately, with where we are with healthcare today, I don't think this is me speaking from basically third hand, because I've had a lot of patients who will come to me and say, my past doctor did this and this and this, and they were very quick to try to put me on medication, metformin or some statin medication, instead of even telling them. Like in my opinion, the way I practice medicine, I think that if somebody comes to you and they have a very early stage disease, or they have what I'm sure Bo also feels always precedes disease, and that is dysfunction. So if somebody comes to you and they have some degree of dysfunction, as a doctor, in my opinion, you should be offering them an entire tailored strategy and plan to reverse their course, right? To change that trend from worsening to improving. The first solution should not be, let's start you on, lovastatin. Let's start you on hydrochlorothiazide, lisinopril, whatever medication, when you are still very well in an area where you can effectively reverse disease if only you are given a way and, you know, adequate recommendation. So from what I've heard, like I said, I can't speak. One of the banes of being human is that we only know life through our eyes, you know, and in reality, other doctors, I truly, is Dr. Nick present in the room with another doctor when that doctor is speaking to their patient? I absolutely am not. So I'm not privy to that conversation. But what I can tell you is that I've had so many people that I literally cannot even count. So many people come to me and say, "Hey, the way you practice medicine is completely unlike, you know, the way that my old doctor practiced medicine," or it seemed like they had a predilection towards putting me on medication, or telling me something that I effectively, you know, did not necessarily want to hear. And you know, we could get into why that is. I personally, Bo, I don't know how you feel, but I think a lot of doctors do not live the life that they preach, and rather than preaching something that in whatever way deemed necessary the patient can ascertain, you're a hypocrite, rather than preaching that, right? Most doctors are going to do what? They're just going to shut up. They're not going to tell you, oh, you need to go to the gym and you need to work out and you need to exercise, when you can take one look at the doctor and be like, yeah, you do none of those things, yet you're telling me to do those things, you know? So, you know, unfortunately, those doctors are more likely to be quiet and be mum because nobody wants to be seen as a hypocrite.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's frustrating, you know, not to get into the politics of it, but I always when this kind of concept comes up of what's wrong with our medical system, you know, I bring up Michelle Obama, as you know, there was the NFL had the Play 30 concept. There's all of these different movements. Michelle Obama again took on the initiative of like improving fitness in this country, and I think in the 8 years that President Obama was in office, I think you know, we saw no real progress, unfortunately. And, you know, not to think that just because the first lady does a little push, I'm sure it changed lives. But from a grandiose perspective, I don't think we saw much change. And I always have these conversations with people like, hey, should I do yoga? Should I, you know, I'm like, if there was a simple fix, if there was a pill that did the thing, we would all do it. That does bring me, I'm sure we can go deep into that topic, but I did want to ask you in your unique perspective, on Ozempic and these GLP-1 inhibitors. For anyone not familiar, super popular these days. Basically, it shuts down your hunger signals. So people who take this for up to a week, they're like they can have a glass of water, someone says, and feel full. So I don't know what your experience is with that. Again, you mentioned like the whole big pharma, everything there. It seems the weight loss piece that and this hunger signaling piece is like literally Krispy Kreme. From how popular these GLP-1 inhibitors have become, Krispy Kreme is seeing plummeting profits for the first time in like their history.
Wow, I didn't know that, really.
Yeah. So, you know, it's fascinating how it's already having these deep impacts. And I don't know what the numbers are right now, but it's definitely, you know, expanding and going out there. There's positives and negatives, like with anything else with medications. But I'd love to throw it back to you and ask you, you know, what is your experience with it? Do you have a take on the whole concept of these Ozempics, GLP-1 inhibitors?
Yeah, I have a take. Absolutely. You know, my take on, so the nuanced approach to medications, in my opinion, irrespective of brand name, irrespective of the you know, the name of the medication or whichever one we're talking about, in my opinion, with meds, one should always do whatever they can to avoid being on a medication. Why? Okay, well, it's a simple reason. You know the benefits or the intended benefits or why you're taking it. What you do not know are all of the potential adverse effects. You may know what's written on the label, but you have to keep in mind that to ascertain what you see on the label, right? The drug went through many different phases of trials. And I'm not saying that those you know, that phase trial system is not efficacious. I do think it is effective, but I think that there is a difference between thinking that something is effective and thinking that something is 100%. Like if you truly think that it is 100% revelatory of all the potential side effects, all the adverse effects, all the long-term consequences, I don't know what to tell you. I could not disagree with you more, because I think that, you know, in as much as science and medical science has advanced, and in as much as I am a doctor, and it's not like I'm anti-science advancing, I think that there's a incredible amount of hubris to not understand the inherent complexity of the human system. You can almost imagine us like a spider. You look at a very intricate spider web, and you've got all these, you know, different pieces of the web going in all different directions, right? And in my opinion, trying to take a medication is, getting on any medication long term and not necessarily thinking about the long term effects is very much akin and very much tantamount to plucking one string of that very elaborate spider web and not thinking that plucking and pulling that one string will have an effect anywhere else on the spider web. There will be an effect, right? This is very much a cause and effect type of system. So when it comes to medications, period, that's how I feel. I'm very much I want to mitigate and minimize this, what we call in medicine, the side effect profile. And the best way for you to minimize, you can absolutely reduce a side effect profile by taking a medication at the right time of the day, taking it with the right foods, you know, keeping this in mind, keeping that in mind. All of those things, when your doctor tells you to do those things, they're trying to minimize the side effect. They're trying to reduce the side effect profile. The only way to absolutely mitigate and minimize and take the side effect profile to 0% is to not have to take the medication in the first place. So when you have certain patients who are all gung-ho about getting on a med, I don't understand that mentality, because that mentality is one of a very short-sighted outlook and a very short-term mindset. Thank you, Dave. As opposed to a long-term mindset. Now, with that said, are there some people who are absolutely so far gone, unfortunately, and that's unfortunate, but so far gone, and you know, whether they're in the end stage disease process or whatsoever, that they need a medication? Absolutely. And for those people, take it, right? Because it's if we're comparing outcomes of being not on medication and being on medication, if your potential outcome, because your disease is so advanced, if your potential outcome is that if your best potential outcome is that you need the med, then take the med. But I think that far too many people are whimsical about medication when, I'm not even a hypocrite about this. I will have a headache for like 8 hours in the day. And then only when that headache is like raging and I have to do something else, will I be like, okay, I'll take a Tylenol. I'll just take a Tylenol and get rid of this. But otherwise, like, I'm not trying to, take meds. Okay. So now that I've articulated that much, let me touch base on Ozempic. I think that Ozempic is effective for people who have tried everything else. Now, I don't mean that they think that they've tried everything else, because from what I found, when patients or clients say that, oh, I've tried everything, they actually haven't. Instead, what they've tried is everything that they're aware of. Mm-hmm. And then there's a degree of hubris in people thinking, oh, I know as much as Dr. Bo or a nutritionist or a dietitian or Dr. Nick, because I absolutely help people with their metabolic health, or anybody else who knows a lot and has educated themselves a lot in this space. I know enough and beyond what they know to say that I have tried everything. Okay, so let's say that somebody genuinely has tried everything. Okay, well, if you want to accept the side effect profile of Ozempic, Wegovy, semaglutide, GLP-1 agonists, then go ahead. But I think that, in my mind, that's something that we should all want to minimize and not necessarily take. And here's another, this is a unique take on it that I think you'll immediately understand, Bo. Okay, so I'm sure you've heard of this, and you know that carbs, in as much, there's nuance here. I'm not telling people not to eat carbs, right? I'm definitely not saying not to eat carbs, but carbs.
That's all I heard. That's all I heard.
Just stop there. Just stop. Carbs are not essential, right? There are no carbohydrates that are essential. There are essential amino acids and there are essential fatty acids. So think about this. If you have a GLP-1 agonist that is essentially agonizing a receptor that is decreasing your appetite to the extent where food, looking at food disgusts you to the extent where the fluid, because you and I both know actual real food, not processed foods that you get at a store, not Doritos, not Oreos, real foods have moisture, have water in them. So you're not just getting your water from this. You're also
so
getting
just to jump in, it's for anyone kind of following this, it's kind of similar to orange juice versus how many oranges would you have to eat plus the fiber.
Absolutely.
That's the real fruit, the real vision of that. And that's why something like orange juice is great somewhere. Again, we have this modern world that we live in, but what the effect it has on our physiology needs to be recognized, to your point about nuance.
Absolutely. Could not agree more. And I think that, when you consider the fact that, there are essential fatty acids and essential protein, essential amino acids, and the fact that water, literal water, is something that people, when you decrease their appetite, intake of all of these things goes down. Intake of their essential fatty acids, intake of essential amino acids, intake of fluid, right? That the preponderance of our body is comprised of. All of these things go down. Essentially, in my opinion, all a GLP-1 agonist is good for is and I'm, I know you're not an MD, but I'm sure you know what I'm talking about when I say this, Bo, and you got taught it as well. But there are a number of feedback systems in the human body. There's positive feedback inhibition. There's negative feedback inhibition, right? There's essentially all of these systems, in my opinion, this is like the spider web analogy from earlier. These are very attuned and definitely discrete, but attuned models that all interact in a holistic fashion. That, in my opinion, when you're over here playing with a GLP-1 agonist, and you're hoping, okay, well, this will just make me stop eating, because you're only thinking about it from an energetic standpoint. You're not thinking about essential fatty acids. You're not thinking about essential amino acids. And because, okay, here's another example. The four that I can think of off the top of my head are D, E, A, and K. Those are the vitamins that are fat-soluble vitamins. So what happens if somebody all of a sudden doesn't want to eat as much, and because their appetite is suppressed, they're not getting as many essential fatty acids? What happens with all of their vitamins and minerals that are only absorbed by the body along with fatty foods, right? And along with the appropriate foods. I mean, I'm sure you can infer that. I'm not a fan of these of the Ozempic and whatnot.
Yeah, I get it. Again, I've been diving in on this. Sure. I have another podcast, the Demand Better podcast, with a personal trainer, my buddy David Corona in New York City. We're going to do an episode on this coming up. So I've been listening to a lot of very interesting back and forth. And there's the biggest, I think, to your, you kind of alluded to it, and I appreciate the nuance you brought to it, but it's the biggest kind of argument is, we don't know what the side effects are. We don't know what all this is, but what is the same thing people said about the COVID vaccine, and there's all the fun science behind that, and how people define science. But the big argument with Ozempic that I've heard, or any of these GLP-1 antagonists, inhibitors, all that fun stuff, is the side effects of being obese is significantly scarier, right? So, and that's what we know that. If you have diabetes, which is what a lot of these drugs were designed for, you have. Let
me interrupt that. That's a stupid argument, in my opinion, because listen to that. That implies binary solutions, does it not? Think about because they're completely correct. Oh, the side effects of obesity are worse. You're not wrong. However, implicit, there's a presupposition within what you said that there are only two tenable solutions. And one solution is live with obesity, and the other solution is Ozempic.
Well, again, I get, and I know where you're coming from, and I'm with you 100% on the, have you tried this? Have you tried that? A lot of times people come to me with, I've had this neck pain or this numbness in my arm I've tried physical therapy. I tried physical therapy, and I'm like, that's like saying you've tried a restaurant, and now you're not going to go to this Michelin star restaurant because you tried McDonald's or Arby's and you had a bad experience. So yeah, physical therapy can be a very different thing. I'd like to think my physical therapy is a little closer to the 3-star Michelin restaurant than the Arby's of it all. Arby's, no disrespect, but but yeah, so I understand what you're saying. But yeah, I think, look, again, obesity is rampant. and I actually had this argument with my co-host David Corona. I mentioned on the other show. We talk about passive modalities like massage, chiropractic, things that you just go in, you lay down, you pay the money, they move you, they make you feel better. These are $1 billion industries, right? And people try. He came out and said something very kind of strong, like you just did, of the fact that people are lazy. They don't want to do the work. I'm like, I kind of, I said, wait, hold on, let's slow down. Like, yes, like if there's a pill that had the same benefits as exercise physiologically, I'm sure everybody would want to take the pill, even the Lance Armstrongs and the hardest, even though he did the steroids, whatever. He ruined the whole thing. We could have used him as an example forever. Whatever other hard worker, LeBron James, whoever you want to use as like the hardest worker out there. But the point being, I pushed back on him to say, I do think, and to your point, I think, what are the obesity rates at this point? 40%, 50% in this country. Metabolic health. You probably know the statistics. We're talking about less than 11%, the last I saw, and that's a study, I think, from 2016. Less than 11% of Americans are metabolically healthy based on the biggest 5 markers of metabolic health. All these statistics, scary that we can say. So, but at the same time, like people go to the gym, they try the gym. We talked about a little bit from like the medical model, right? What can a physician, a primary care doctor say to that person? Eat less, exercise more. I don't know if you probably are familiar with Rob Wolf's book, Wired to Eat. I know you're in the CrossFit space. He was around that beginning of the time. But Rob Wolf now, I'm a big ambassador and affiliate for Element. He's the founder of that, former biochemist. He was the CrossFit nutrition guy before he basically cursed out Dave Castro and called him out publicly. That was a fun conversation. If you're not familiar, go check out the Black Box Summit from, I think, 2009 or 2008.
Okay, I will.
Anyway, point being that he wrote a book called Wired to Eat. He says, you know what, if you're living in this time and you're like us and you're not overweight and unhealthy, over fat, we should always say, that's another piece to that conversation and language. But he's saying it's not your fault. It is your responsibility, but it's not your fault because everything is designed. Literally, there's food scientists designed to say, hey, I bet you can't eat just one of these potato chips because if you have one, we know it's going to trigger that thing in your brain that's going to say, I want more.
Sure.
So anyway, the point being that I think that there is nuance, and that's why we like having these long form conversations. And like I said, we could probably go 4 hours, have one of these Joe Rogan type conversations, and dive deep into it, have a roundtable, bring more people on. I think there's a lot of nuance to this. So, so yeah, for sure. I think that, with the way things are, like I said, the fact that these are getting out into the world, right? Like it or not, I agree with you. We should try to, I'm 100% with you. When I have a client stand in front of me, they're 70 pounds overweight. I'm just using a random example. And they say, I'm on this, and this medication. I say, hey, my goal working with your medical doctor, cause I am a doctor of physical therapy. I do have a background in nutrition, precision nutrition, which is where we connected for the second or third time here. So I say my goal is to get you off of those meds because you're going to be healthier. CrossFit does all these great videos where they say, hey, we reverse this person's diabetes just by helping them exercise, be more aware of nutrition. And again, the CrossFit nutrition piece is eat meat, fish, vegetables, nuts, seeds, oils, a little bit of starch, a little bit of fruit, limit your sugar, limit your processed foods, and boom, that's it. So anyway, the question in there, I guess, coming back to you is I don't know what the solution is for obesity, and everyone keeps throwing things around. So, I mean, as much as I think I agree with you of I want to avoid, or we should all work to avoid medications, supplements are medications, fish oils, medications, in some capacity. So it's unfortunately, I think people are down that rabbit hole maybe too far. You use language like that of like, yeah, they've tried things. And I don't think, I think we got to start pulling people out of this because every person that is falling down that path is costing the system that we live in hundreds of thousands of dollars, and again, to your point, if this is a big profit industry and getting them healthy, if Ozempic is something that's going to get them healthy, again, it becomes a philosophical, spiritual, religious, whatever conversation. But I do think there's something there. So, and it's interesting to say the least. So I appreciate you sharing your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's interesting because I actually don't think we can do anything about it in this form, right? One-on-one, a patient with their doctor, a patient with you, a patient with anybody else who cares on a one-on-one setting, I simply don't think that's enough leverage. And this is why actually towards the end of January, I started putting together, I basically created a community and put together a whole bunch of video courses and resources and things that I'm still, still creating and still releasing. And then most importantly, I have group calls. I have 2 group calls, 2 live calls a week. But I think what I found and what I have personally noticed with this community, and I had an inkling about this even before I started it, just because if you look at human beings, right, we're very tribalistic, we're very community based. So it stands to reason that if you want to change the behavior of one person, what you really need to do is associate them and drop them into a community of people who are all choosing better actions that have them moving towards some objective, some goal. That person will self-correct by themselves. They'll automatically say, okay, this is interesting. I now know that I need to fix these things. I need to fix these things, not just because it's better for me, but also because that aligns me more with the group on, in a social setting, on a social basis, and this, I think that this applies even if somebody feels that they're a loner. And like me, I know for sure I'm one of these people who like, what's the most politically correct way to say this? I say that again.
An introvert?
No. I'm an extrovert. I think the best way for me to address it is think about when you were a teenager, or basically 10 to 20. You very much cared what other people thought. At least I did, right? I was always,
you got the East Coast mentality. I don't give a what.
Yes, absolutely. Right now,
that's where you're going.
Right now, I'm like, listen, like I will absolutely, and I think it's a very balanced. You have to approach that carefully, because if you are genuinely, I like to see myself as having a growth mindset and being obsessed with improving in all elements. So if you genuinely have that mindset, okay, you want to improve, then you need to be able to take feedback. So I have literally gone out of my way to ask people for feedback, and then I take it non-emotionally. And especially if I get that same point of feedback from multiple people, then in my head, I'm like, this has to be true. There's no way that so many unassociated people all have the same, point of contention, and there's nothing to be said at that. That's not how reality works. So I think that there needs to be a balance of taking feedback from people and also not giving I don't even know how to say this. How do I?
A what?
Not giving a what. So ultimately though, I think that community though is beautiful, because even when you are the type of person who you genuinely don't care what people think, you still want to be part of a community. Like this is the reason why I've never been in prison. I'm not speaking from experience. I just know what I see on TV. But this is the reason why when you're in prison, to punish you, they put you in solitary confinement. Because way back when, some weird person who was into, punishing other people figured out, okay, well, if I, seclude this person away from other people, it will be such a punishment that it will literally drive them mad after a certain extent, right? So if you take that concept and you just reverse it and you say, okay, that's interesting. Let me put this person who is struggling with their habits, with their decision-making, with their mindset, with their ideologies, with their thought patterns, with their beliefs. Let me put that person in a group of people who more closely resembles the person that person wants to become. All of a sudden, everything about them will change. So to go back to what I was saying, I don't think that the answer lies in people like you and I having one-on-one interactions with our patients and clients. I think instead that the solution lies in fundamentally changing the culture and fostering community and growing community, which,
Yeah. I mean, the reality though is, again, that human nature. And just listening to, I don't know if you've listened to Barry Weiss, honestly, really, really fun podcast, and very serious stuff. But she shared how she was at a Hollywood party, and this was shortly after COVID, and everyone's kind of coming out of their 15-pound freshman 15, COVID 15, whatever you want to call it. And somebody was like, oh, like you look oh, you doing the Pilates? And she's like, no. The other person was like, no, come up. And they showed her their little fridge with all the Ozempic, and they're like, she literally took an injection right there. and was like, yeah, like, and so that's the thing, to your point, is this is the community. This is the spread. It's this thing that works. It's like, hey, if you can inject this thing and eliminate like 20% of your wrinkles, wouldn't you do that? Like, and we don't even know the side effects. And she even shared, like, she's like, I don't know how I feel about it. I don't think she's committed to continuing to take it. And again, we don't know the long-term side effects. But the point being, to your to what you just shared, is like, I think, unfortunately, the nature is everyone kind of jokes, I just turned 40. I have all my cohort of classmates from high school, college, all that. And they're sharing that, like, oh, I just had this surgery. I just popped my Achilles playing pickleball. The usual. And pickleball, by the way, that's the next trend. That's the next thing we should talk about. But
I've never played. I don't even I don't have any inclination to play that. I feel like if I go to a pickleball court, I would put money. I would drive to a court with you, Bo, and before we even got to the court, I would be like, let's put $50 on it that there is not one black person on that entire court. And I would be right.
Oh, yeah, maybe, probably. I mean, we don't need to make too many assumptions, but yeah, I do know a few. I know quite a few black people who play pickleball and are obsessed with it.
Okay, all right, maybe I'm wrong.
But they might be in more affluent Californian communities. I'm not going to stereotype and whatever, but I was like the only white guy on my football team, so I keep up with my peoples. But
so Bo, let me ask you a question real quick. What do you think about Ozempic face? Have you heard about this?
That it's like a little like sucked out or that whole thing.
No, yeah, it's gaunt. It's gaunt. They look very gaunt.
Oh, okay. I kind of randomly heard about it again in my kind of research, and but yeah, ultimately, again, it's just one of those things that, like, people are gonna, I think at the end of the day, to both, I think the cross section of our 2 points here is I think it's a train that's happening. Like, whatever. We could disagree about politics. We could say whatever we want about Biden and Trump. When we're recording this, we're going into the election. You could say whatever you want about RFK and the worm eating his brain and his anti-vax things. Whatever. You could say all that stuff. But at the end of the day, like, it's going to be Trump versus Biden, and it's going to be squeaked out as we saw in 2020. So it doesn't matter. The train's happening. You can have your opinions on it at this point. Like you said, it's well, that's where, again, like, I've had actually Juliet Starrett and Kelly Starrett, the Ready State, on here. I kind of proposed this to them. Like, it's overwhelming to think about the landscape of medicine. And I kind of proposed that question to them, and they said, be the node. And they have this in their most recent book. Their most recent book, which I can't think of the name. I always mess up on the name of their book. It's Born to Be Fit, Born to Run, Born to something. Sorry, guys. I had them on here, but I asked them that question. They said, be the node, be the person in your community that is hopefully being the, like, hey, this is how you're going to reverse your osteoporosis. Yes. And, like, come to me, let me have garage gym workouts, and then if you guys want to come, like, great. Like, I have my garage gym. Like, come work out with me. I'm going to do it Sundays, 10 a.m. If you want to join, great. If you don't want to join, no. But right. Great. But at the point being, be the node, be that change. Everyone's going to be like, hey, Bo's really healthy, or Dr. Nick's really healthy. He's avoiding the strip club. I don't know how to avoid the strip. No, I'm kidding. I'm not going to keep picking on that. But the point being that, like, be the node was the thing, like, almost opposite of what you're saying. You kind of said, I don't think we can make this change one-on-one, but and again, I'm not saying you're wrong, but it was interesting. And the same reason I ask people, like, how do you define fitness, is you get these kind of almost opposing definitions and different perspectives on it, which is why I love doing these conversations. And so it's really, again, I agree. Like, we're not going to probably change the train that is Ozempic. But at the same time, like, I'm going to go ahead and impact. You have on your bio, I think, over 10,000 lives positively impacted or something like that, So, and knees over toes guy, one of the more, he's in the millions. And he originally, I think they got rid of that on their branding, because I think I actually was one to call them out on it, where they'd be like, we had 2,342 people improve their knees. And I'm like, well, how many other people did your program and didn't improve your knees? Because I know I've heard from at least 40 of them where they're like, I tried it and it made my meniscus tear worse. And I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. So anyway, the point being that, in terms of impacting lives and all that good stuff, this is why we have these conversations, guys. I want to be respectful of your time, good sir, the good doctor, and say, if people want to work with you, you mentioned it sounded like kind of a I don't want to call it a mastermind group, but your group that you started, is that open to folks, or how is that something you're promoting?
Yeah. It's absolutely open. We even have a free tier, so anybody can join. In fact, in the free tier, I have when I'm done with it, it's going to be an 11, I believe, an 11 module nutrition fundamentals class, where I basically go into, okay, these are the things you need to know about nutrition that, unfortunately, most doctors, and you know this as well as I do, most doctors are not taught. We're not taught this in med school. This is something that most people, even outside of doctors, simply do not know. But essentially breaking down, okay, proteins, fats, fiber, carbohydrates, fructose, essentially diving deep into macronutrients and just the fundamentals of nutrition. I also have a lot of other courses on there. I, as I'm sure you know, like to focus on the fundamentals. So I have sleep improvement, sleep hygiene course on there. I have a course for specifically improving your lean mass, another one for fat loss. I have monthly workouts that change every single month. Monthly meal plans, recipe packs. Twice a week, we have live calls where we get together, literally just like this. And there's a group of us. I think on the last call the other day, there was six ladies, and we just get together and they hit me with questions, right? And just like we're doing right now. And I've never been a good, even in med school, I don't really like to bullshit people. So if there's something that I don't have a perspective on, or I don't have nuanced experience with, I'll just defer and tell them, hey, I can't help you with that. But thus far, thankfully, every question that I've been asked, I've been able to provide an explanation, because ultimately, I think that I think things like this are more needed, because one of the biggest complaints that I hear from patients who speak to their doctor is that they don't have enough time in the office with their doctor. Hey, I only have, it's like the doctor's ignoring me. It's only 5 minutes. They're not even looking me in the face, right? They're looking at the computer and they're typing away and they're interrupting me. And some of that is on us as physicians, on us as medical doctors. But I can tell you, as any other medical doctor can tell you, that a lot of that is actually also on the administrators, who are breathing down our necks from above, demanding that we see however many patients a day, so that we maximize how much money we make them. And personally, even in med school and in residency, I was always a type of med student / doctor who liked to sit down and explain pathophysiology and physiology to people in the simplest terms possible, right? In med school, actually, I had an attending doctor who looked at me and he literally said, "Yeah, you're going to be primary care." He was like internal medicine or family medicine. He was like, "I don't know, but you're going to be primary care." And I was like, "Why?" He was like, "Because I've watched you with patients and you can talk to people, you can relate to them, you can break things down, you can break down the complicated in a simple way." And he, lo and behold, 4 years later, he turned out to be correct. But I think that that's one of the things that I love the most about my community, are the live calls, or being able to sit down and relate and connect with people who have genuine questions. And then ultimately, right, with the entire community, I think it's all about impact. The community right now, I think, is maybe 60 something people, but I envision a day when we get to 100, 500, 1,000. And then when you when you sum up the total impact that I'm having on people's lifestyle choices, right? What are their choices as it relates to nutrition, movement, stress management, recovery, mindset? I really think that, a lot can be done for that. So yeah, my Instagram, all my social media is the Fittest Doc. My website, yep, right there, I see that. My website is the Fittest You, all one word, obviously, thefittestyou.org. And you can.
And that's YOU, not like university.
Yes. YOU. And through that website, you can sign up for the community. You can book a call with me. You can, what else can you do? You can get my social media. So but this was a blessing. And I appreciate you, giving me the opportunity to speak on your platform. And you and I live in the same state, so we'll make a part 2 happen, and something in person. We should even just do the gym. That's what we should do at first, before all that, Bo.
Yeah. Tim Ferriss is doing podcasts now, like on walks. I think, someone really literally mentioned that to me, a big physical therapist, game changer dude. He was thinking about it. I'm one of the fit people he knows, like fitness, physical therapy. He's like, you should do things in like a WOD. Like, I'm like, it's a little hard to talk. And it's like, what are we doing? Like, you're doing burpees. And as I'm like catching my breath, I'm like, so Nick, do you think, what do you think of Ozempic? I don't know if it'll work. I told him logistically, I'm like, I like the concept, but maybe if you're at that zone 2 conversational pace, kind of,
Sure.
maybe, but
Sure.
that'd be very cool. And I really did like the working on skills, working on the handstand walks, things like that. Where, I think those videos like that can be very helpful for people listening, because so many people are going on these journeys. The people watching, you start doing some understanding of who your audience is. They're going through their journeys, and I think they like seeing people struggle. And everyone sees you, they're like, this big, strong dude, like he's deadlifting 555. I can maybe deadlift 55 pounds if I'm lucky, and it's like 500 pounds away. So there's this huge disconnect. But then it's like, oh, he struggles with this too. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And it makes you more human. I think it's great stuff. And I love.
I get that, Bo, and I not to knock that perspective. I get that, but in my opinion, anyone who's ever better than me at anything, I always think to myself, this is great, because this person is proving to me, number one, that this is humanly possible, and number two, that they came from a place of not looking like that, not being able to do that, to where they are now. So
I think people see you and they're like, this guy was born strong. I think again, just for whatever that's worth. For whatever that's worth. And it might not be true, but that's how it comes across, of like, this dude is the strongest dude I've ever seen.
Definitely not true. You know what? I'm gonna
just
post.
telling you, that's what Instagram looks like.
I'm gonna post some pictures on my. Actually, there is one. There is one. No, Bo, if you scroll down far enough, there's a snap.
That's the point. That's the point. No one's scrolling down to like 2016 or whatever.
Okay. All right.
You got to keep bringing that stuff up. You know what I mean? But that's okay. That's okay. But generally, that's one of the big negatives of social media, is it's considered like the highlight reel. So people don't share their struggles. People don't share that. And the truth is, most people have struggles, and most people, are living that life. And we're here to help them, like in the business side, the one-on-one side. But I do think sometimes we miss that boat on social media. I'm guilty of it myself. And I got a calf strain. I got a rehab over the next 6 days to get ready for this half Ironman. So I'm gonna share that journey on there. But we'll definitely link up.
Absolutely.
We'll link you out with Lincoln Park. You guys, thank you again for your time, Dr. Nick, the fittest doc. Go check him out, guys. We'll get that name right, Chester.